Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. We head to Europe now to continue our football discussions. The knockout phase playoffs in Europe's premier club competition, the UEFA Champions League, will kick off on Tuesday with 4 first-leg matches. Brest will host Paris Saint-Germain. The Old Lady of Juventus will welcome PSV Eindhoven. This match can be seen live on SportsMax 2 at 4 o'clock Eastern Caribbean time, 3 in Jamaica. Borussia Dortmund will travel away to Sporting, while in the match of the day, the last 2 winners, Manchester City and Real Madrid, will battle at the Etihad. We have called on the expertise of Brent Sancho to assess this Real Madrid-Manchester City matchup. Brent, as always, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. This is a tough one, given the quality of both teams, but because of Man City's recent form, actually it's more than recent, it's been running for quite a while now, Real Madrid would go in favourites here, would they?
Yeah, you would think so. It's strange, you know, Lance, and normally when we talk about this fixture, we can go on and all the superlatives and how great these teams are, but we're coming up in a situation where Manchester City, as you rightfully mentioned, has had their struggles, and it's not just for a short period of time where many of us football fans and analysts alike were saying, nah, don't worry, Pep Guardiola will get over it. It's gone on for quite some time, and so you do have to start to worry that it is part of their DNA now. And of course, Real Madrid also have had their troubles, maybe not as major as Manchester City, but their defensive injuries and frailties at the back has been well prescribed and well on show. And of course, the challenges as well in the middle of the park, where they've shown a bit of unbalance, has also been well prescribed and shown for the world to see. So when you look at those two situations, it's certainly not the Manchester City versus Real Madrid clash that we probably would have been waxing lyrical about a couple months ago.
Yeah, I saw Pep in a pre-match interview today, press conference, Brent, and his body language didn't suggest a whole lot of confidence. But we know he can be very astute, so sometimes you don't listen too much to what he's saying, but he obviously will have his plans. He did suggest, though, that he wants his players to be smart and impose their game against Real Madrid. What would he have meant by that?
I think he wants to go back to Manchester City and what they're good at, and that is being a ball-dominant team, being a bit more precise in what they do in the middle of the park, and even being a lot more clinical in the offensive side of things. I think that's a conversation that is not had enough of Manchester City's lack of cutting edge up front. And I think more importantly as well, Lance, the silly mistakes that have cost them goals and uncharacteristic leads that they've lost on many occasions. Of course, the PSG game comes to mind. So I think those factors are what Pep would want to see. And whether or not he can get that from a City team that time and time again have come up a bit short is the question. You would hope somewhere in that locker room, that this game and the magnitude of the game, and it's one of those recent rivalries, will conjure up a Man City of old. And I think that's probably what Pep would be hoping for.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, you spoke about a lot riding on this game. I mean, it's a knockout match. One of the team, of course, will be hoping to make that last 16. And both of the teams would be very disappointed in themselves that they have to try to get into the Champions League last 16 in such a manner. So you spoke about Manchester City, but Brent, let's talk a bit now about Real Madrid and, of course, their defensive woes, because it's no secret we looked at them on the weekend in La Liga against Atletico Madrid. They could only manage a draw, and then when it came to this UEFA Champions League, of course, 3 defeats coming in that group stage. A lot of their key players missing. How much of a problem will their defensive woes play when it comes to this matchup tomorrow?
I think it's a big problem, all right? I really do. And when you look at the makeshift defense, so what has been a makeshift defense, of course, Ascension was a lot better on the weekend for Real Madrid. Tchouaméni playing at the back, that has had its challenges, just not a natural centre-half. And of course, in the wing-back positions, Lucas Vazquez trying to deputize in time and time again. He has had his shortcomings. And they come up against, arguably, on their day, one of the better offensive teams that's left in this competition. And you do think that this game will hinge on that. How well can Real Madrid cope with this makeshift defense, and how well can Manchester City exploit this makeshift defense. One thing that must be told is that despite that makeshift defense, they still have a very talented goalkeeper behind all four of them. And he may be a critical part in this as well, because he has been in the past. So I think when you add those factors up, it does make for an interesting game tomorrow. And not interesting for the facts that we are so used to when it comes to this fixture. Interesting for all the external things that we just mentioned in this conversation and how that would play out.
Yeah, and you quickly touched on Real Madrid's attacking prowess. They've been known for that this season, their goal-scoring capabilities. One of the key questions on my mind, and I know it will be on, of course, Pep Guardiola's mind, is how can his team suppress that attacking threat that Real Madrid continues to show? What's the answer, Brent?
There's none. There's none. Look, on their day, Vinny Jr., Rodrigo, of course, Bellingham, I will throw him into that cuatro, as they say, in Spanish, quartet. And of course, Mbappe, a man that is now kind of rounded into the form that you would have expected him to bring to the table. On their day, they're unplayable. And that's a fact. There's no way you can keep with them. Their 1v1 ability, the ability to create for each other, and their individual skill that they possess. And then, of course, their match-winning ability as well. It's easily the best quartet in world football attacking-wise, without a doubt. But they themselves have found consistency a bit of a struggle. But the one thing about Champions League and, of course, Real Madrid and their affinity with this tournament is they do find ways to seize the moment. And if that quartet can play well for 60, 70 minutes, I don't think Manchester City would have a chance, because they just have all of the factors I just mentioned to win any football game, and, of course, to go on and win the Champions League finals.
Yeah, Ruben Diaz earlier today as well, he was interviewed in a press conference as they build up to this exciting matchup. Asked, if they're going to pit Kylian Mbappe rivalry versus an Erling Haaland, where goals are concerned. Erling Haaland is one of the players, based on the numbers. He hasn't really gone 3 matches without scoring, so many people are expecting him to fire. He responded, no, it's not a Kylian Mbappe versus Erling Haaland. It's actually a Manchester City versus a Real Madrid. But I'm so keen to see two of the best, and I'm saying this because of what records have shown, right? When it comes to the managers, their tactical approaches, they try to get the better of the other, because Carlo Ancelotti, a man who you really don't want to go against when it comes to tactics, he has proven himself over and over, especially in the Champions League. But then you think about Pep Guardiola and what he has done. Of course, both managers right now, sometimes they look a bit helpless.
Yeah, sometimes they do, and I'm happy you mentioned the tactical aspect of this game. And I think really, when you start talking about the tactical aspect, you would have to look at Carlo Ancelotti and Real Madrid. The question is he going to be deploying a more aggressive attacking formation, or is he going to try to reinforce the midfield for defensive stability? I think that is really where this game hinges, as it relates to, of course, tactical approaches. Yes, Pep Guardiola does have his challenges, but I don't think necessarily it's about tactical flexibility for Pep. I think the individuals within his squad have just been performing under par, and it doesn't matter if you play them in a 5-3-2, 5-4-1, or whatever system you want to name. It's the individuals, whether they come to town. I think for Carlo Ancelotti, tactical astuteness falls right at his doorstep, and he could probably or possibly win Real Madrid the game or lose them the game, at the point I just mentioned, on whether or not he goes for it aggressively or he looks for that midfield stability that would help the defense.
Yeah, Brenton, just picking up on that point, you spoke about the Real Madrid quartet and the quality that they possess up front. 59 goals they have scored this campaign in all competitions. But I do have to wonder if one of the concerns for Real Madrid will be, the defensive shift that they put in, and whether Manchester City will have the quality to let Real Madrid pay if they're not putting in the sort of defensive shift as a team, which would include those superstar 4.
Yeah, and a big part of the success of that quartet is the numbers in and around them, the movement of the midfield, the line breaking runs. from Valverde and maybe Ceballos if he does start, and of course wing backs pushing high up the park, which allows 1v1 situations, which allows the unbalancing of teams. The question is in transition, and as you rightfully point out, can Real Madrid cope? And can Manchester City provide the sort of ammunition to make them have to cope? That really is the question, because you do know there is opportunity for you in transition against Real Madrid. It's whether or not the likes of the Phil Foden, if he does start, Silva, De Bruyne, if they have the legs and the gusto to get forward with the sort of energies that is required to impact this. And I think as well, that is a situation that you have to keep your eye on, because it will have an impact as to how this game goes.
Yeah, very much the case. I do want to take Jude Bellingham out of that conversation, though, because I think generally he puts in a pretty good defensive shift. So maybe it is the front three that we should focus on in that conversation. But Brent, I want to ask a little bit about Pep Guardiola. We know that he signed a one-year contract extension in December. But let's say Manchester City do not win this knockout phase tie. I was going to say tomorrow, but it is over 2 legs, so it's not quite done regardless of what happens tomorrow. I remember ahead of their last league phase match, Pep Guardiola was asked about, you know, what would happen if they didn't qualify, and he said, well, let's deal with that after the final match against Club Brugge. As it turned out, they did go through, and so there was no need to answer those questions. But I want to put this to you, Brent. I know he signed a one-year contract extension, but if Manchester City do not advance beyond this round of the competition, would it be the perfect time for Pep Guardiola to step away, especially because it is very clear that Manchester City might need a complete recycling of players given what has happened this campaign, or in the last 2.5 months of this campaign?
A good question, Ricardo. And then if you go back to when he left Barcelona, it was a similar type situation. And you do wonder if he wants to go through that. Now, he's mentioned in the past that he would like to attempt coaching on the international stage, of course, the country aspect of things. He was heavily touted with the Brazil national team, and that still is a situation in Brazil that's still a bit unclear, although they have hired a new coach. And of course, if Pep Guardiola becomes available, I'm very sure they would throw their hat in the ring as well. But it is a good question, because a rebuild of any magnitude is difficult in wood football. We have fair play rules, something that Manchester City, of course, have teetered around for quite some time. And all that comes with dipping your foot in the market. We've seen them going in the January market and spend quite a lot with players that I do wonder if they had the opportunity this summer they would sign. And the question is, what type of rebuild? And are the players out there, are they accessible for Manchester City? I think all those factors would lean into whether or not Pep goes beyond his one-year extension. But I do feel, however, that he will stay to see at least a portion of this rebuild. Whether or not he stays for the complete rebuild, I think there's a lot of factors still to play out to see if that comes to fruition.
Okay, Brent, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for talking to us as usual. Eyes glued on what happens tomorrow in the UCL playoffs, starting off, as we said, the Manchester City Real Madrid game, the key match. But great getting your thoughts, Brent, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, guys, have a great one.
Yeah, still a lot more to come on the SportsMax Zone, including cricket and the Super Bowl. We'll be back with more after this.